Good news, friends. Environment and Climate Change Canada's own messaging shows that our country isn't burning to the ground. Will they scrap the carbon tax or just their inconvenient weather bulletins? It's probably one of the most predictable things about the weather here in Canada that politicians and environmentalists will eventually dub this year the hottest summer on record. Either the last year was just declared the hottest year ever, or the next one will be. It's a constant cycle of anxiety and dire end of the world warnings. But is that true? Was last year the hottest on record? Well, not for large parts of Canada, and maybe not even for all the parts of Canada, given the short nature of the so-called official record. Blacklock's reporter had the story this morning. It sits behind their paywall. The Department of Environment, in a climate change bulletin, said this past summer was cooler in much of the country than in the 1950s. Data followed election claims that the planet was, quote unquote, burning. Average summer temperatures across the country have fluctuated from year to year over the 1948 to 2019 period, staff wrote in a Climate Trends and Variations bulletin. National temperatures were 0.7 of a degree above average, the same as the summer of 1955. Maybe my comfortable SUV went back in time to warm up 1955. Anyway, I went looking for that report, the Climate Trends and Variations Bulletin from Environment and Climate Change Canada. I wanted to gaze upon it with my own eyes. It's a mixed bag, as one would expect when talking about the weather across, the second largest country on the face of the earth by land mass, with our 3 coasts and wildly varying topography. But however you slice it, the place, well, it just isn't burning down. Let's take a look at the report, shall we? The average national temperature for the summer, June to August of 2019, was 0.06 degrees above the baseline average, defined as the mean over the 1961 to 1990 reference period, based on preliminary data, which is the 25th warmest observed since nationwide recording began in 1948. The 25th warmest on record, you say, at a time when Canada has the largest population ever, driving the greatest amount of vehicles in our 152-year history. Well, what do you know? There's more. To be fair, Yukon, Western and Southern British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island also experienced temperatures above the baseline average. Okay, but it's not the warmest year ever, is it? Just above the baseline average, which is oddly determined only by using about the last 72 years of recent human history. See that? The data only goes back to the beginning of 1948, which is a rounding error in the history of humanity, let alone the Earth. The data only goes back that far because the feds scrapped nearly all the temperature data they had on record from 1850 to 1949, claiming it was unreliable. Now let's keep going through this report. Below average temperatures were experienced in the Northwest Territories, northeastern British Columbia, Alberta, of course, Saskatchewan, and Labrador. Northeastern BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Labrador. Well, that's weird. All those climate emergency declarations proclaimed in Canadian cities last year as part of a global movement to do so seem a little unnecessary now, don't you think? For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Liberal politicians and environmentalists would probably call me a climate change heretic because I don't believe that taxes can change the weather, and I don't think you can really care about the science all that much when you make it a routine to throw out 100 years of statistical weather data. Now, it's because of this that I'm going to the UN Climate Change Conference in Madrid next week with my colleague, Kian Bexty. We don't think any of the true believing reporters that are allowed to go to these sorts of UN events are going to tell you the truth. To support our trip there, go to rebelun.com.